Hi, I'm Colin Ireland of the Sales, Execution, and Implementation team on behalf of State Street ETFs. Our group focuses on helping investors better understand ETF liquidity and work through different execution strategies.
And my name is James Mond. I'm also with the Sales, Execution, and Implementation group with Spider ETFs. I focus primarily on our institutional clients, working with them on questions of ETF liquidity, equity market structure, and derivatives.
Lesson 1, ETF Liquidity Considerations. Investors should be familiar with the ETF liquidity pool. It's important to note that secondary market trading accounts for just a limited portion of an ETF's overall liquidity. While investors are likely familiar with the on-exchange volumes, they may be less familiar with some of the over-the-counter markets and the primary market, which facilitates creation and redemption. On exchange, investors can match and find prices through algorithms and other types of strategies. Other execution strategies, which we'll walk through further, are available by engaging with a liquidity provider.
The creation-redemption process involves the in-kind transfer, in most cases, of underlying securities between the ETF issuer, or the ETF trust, and an authorized participant. Authorized participants are self-clearing broker-dealers who have agreements in place to engage directly with the ETF trusts to effect creation and redemption orders. In the case of a creation, the authorized participant will submit the underlying basket of securities to the ETF issuer, and the ETF issuer will, in kind, provide the ETF shares to the authorized participant. In the case of a redemption, the process is essentially reversed, where the authorized participant will present ETF shares to the issuer for redemption, and the issuer will provide the underlying basket of securities in an in-kind transfer to the authorized participant. This is important because there's a tax efficiency associated with that in-kind transfer versus selling out of securities at the trust level as other fund structures may do. ETFs have an added level of tax efficiency because of the in-kind creation and redemption process. Next, we think about what goes into INAV and the fair value, and we think about the inputs of trading the underlying basket of securities. In the case of U.S. large cap underlying securities, there's basically the basket cost, or the impact of trading the basket is the major factor that goes into the INAV, or the cost of pricing the ETF, as you can see illustrated by the navy blue section. As you move into mid and small cap or equal weight indices, you may see a larger impact to trading those underlying baskets due to the nature of the liquidity of the underlying pool of assets. As you move out into international securities, in the example here we look at Europe large cap, there are additional factors that come into play. For example, buy or sell taxes or other costs related to currencies on local markets. You can see that illustrated by the gray and green areas. And then we move on finally to the bottom example, which has EM large cap, where you see a greater impact to trading the basket and potentially larger transaction costs as well, resulting in potentially wider arbitrage bands and bid-ask spreads.
ETFs are unique in that they trade on secondary exchange, and therefore the cost component is different than other vehicles. The ETF total cost of ownership is a different calculation than just looking at the expense ratio. The tracking return difference is a combination of the expense ratio, the ability of the issuer to meet portfolio management obligations, and any securities lending revenue derived at the underlying security level. These components form what we consider to be tracking return difference. This is primarily the responsibility of the issuer. The investor bears trading cost responsibility. The bid-ask spread and any associated trading commissions and fees are an important consideration when considering the total cost of one ETF versus another. In the example below, we can see that the ETF with a higher expense ratio actually leads to higher total net return after consideration of some of these factors.